Hey team, today we are going to talk about the 5 stages of small business growth. This came out in Harvard Business Review in 1983 by professors Churchill and Lewis, and it's still relevant today when it comes to business acquisition, which is what I promote. And so it's important to understand when you are getting ready to acquire a business or you're analyzing a business to acquire, that you understand what stage it's in and what you might need to do to get to that next stage should you choose to do so. My name is Walker Deibel. I am the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Buy Then Build and founder of Acquisition Lab. The first stage of growth in any business, of course, is going to be just existing, okay? So, can I exist? Can I, attract and convert paying customers? And can I deliver that product, right? So ultimately, I'm going to define this as product market fit. And the weight of this stage usually is heavily lifted by two things. One, the owner's ability to execute on, conversion of paying customers and delivery of the product. And two, cash, okay? That's ultimately where it is. Can I get product market fit, right? Can I get people to actually buy it? The next stage is survival, okay? So by the way, existing, just to go back, that's going to be startups, right? Just starting from scratch. I talk a lot about how, the majority of startups fail. It's no secret. And I also talk about how what's less understood is the fact that, 96% of all companies that actually continue to exist never exceed $1 million in revenue, okay? The authors didn't put any mark on survival, but I think that, we need to just say that this is going to be, less than, $1 million in revenue, just as a general rule of thumb, and we can kind of go from there. The survival phase is basically a company that can continue to exist, okay? That there's existing product market fit. That people are kind of buying the items, but it's one of these things where it's always going to be kind of cash poor. It's covering its expenses. There's probably a income for the owner, but they're never able to really get out of that, let's call it mom and pop kind of, recipe. Okay, so it's really an exalted version of existence. So it exists, but it never actually goes on to sort of thrive, right? But then you hit this sort of success phase, okay? And, this is very general, okay? And it depends on so many things. But let's just go ahead and peg this somewhere between, 1 million and, I don't know. You could even get as big as 20 million, I would say, even higher, 25, to just be in this success phase. The success phase is interesting because it comes with a big decision, okay? Success means that you've reached a level of success in your business. There's existing product market fit. You've reached that point of economic stability. You probably have above average margins, okay, in this stage. And this is the point where you have built a successful business, okay? This is something that it's generating cash. You've got all of these things. And so a lot of times when we're looking at buying companies, okay, we are usually looking at, if you're looking in that sub, $5 million space or sub, $20 million market, you're going to be trying to figure out which one of these types of businesses am I looking at, right? If it's just barely existing, you better be getting that asset for pennies on the dollar after you already have an infrastructure to execute on it, okay? So these can be useful in terms of growing through acquisition, but you're not going to be paying a lot for these because there's no existing cash flow. You're not going to be able to use leverage or any of the other things that we talk about in Buy Then Build. So survival is this, am I buying a, elevator repair company that just consistently makes money and it's a one-man, shop, and, he's making, $750,000 a year, and, 50% of that, I'm making this up, is equipment. The other 50 is labor. Half of that labor goes to someone else, and this guy's making $250,000 a year fixing, elevators. I just made that up, but that's the sort of survival kind of thing. Success, you start to have, management teams. You start to have processes, usually like forecasting. But the success stage is a company that has decided to pretty much stay small, because here's what happens at the success stage: is you have this kind of the owner has this decision, okay, where they say, all right, I am either going to be successful, okay, and disengage, meaning I am going to, stop taking on debt. I'm going to stop growing the business. I just want to own a cash cow, and it's going to, maybe I'll run for office, maybe I'll start another business, maybe I'll whatever. Okay, these are great businesses to buy, by the way. This is your cash cow. But the other thing is, when we're looking for businesses to acquire, we're also looking for how do we grow them, right? And a lot of times there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, which we talk, things like, online marketing or, adding systems, all of these types of things. But the other way is when they say like, okay, success stage growth, okay? And this is when small companies go on to become larger companies, okay? And what happens here, okay, this is when the owner risks it all. They say, okay, we have gotten to this place where I own this successful business. I could just chill out, play golf, own a cash cow, or I can pull all the resources together. I can take on debt. I can do all of these things to push the company to the next level, okay? And what happens here is it's really, the success here is really going to depend on the people in the business, usually at the higher, builds out a team, okay? The planning, the strategic planning that goes into place to actually execute on this, all right? Number 3 is the systems that get put into place in order to execute and turn this thing, into a machine. And also 4 is the owner's ability to delegate, okay? So you have a business that's generating money, all right? But the owner's saying, we are gonna reinvest it all, we are gonna bet it all, I'll probably even go get a loan and push this thing to the next level. I actually have an example that I'm thinking of in my head, which is there's a recent, there's a gentleman who read Buy Then Build. He had a successful business. I can't disclose anything because it's private and whatever. But ultimately he went out and raised capital, got $10 million in debt by the value of the IP, and then ultimately went on and is now growing through acquisition and adding to the team and rolling out different aspects of his roadmap. And now he's valued at $80 million. Okay, so this is someone who his company was valued at $10 million before he read Buy Then Build, and now he's valued at $80 million. But the thing is like, all Buy Then Build did was spark that in him in order to go on a growth through acquisition kind of mix with all, pulling together all of the resources that I know he had access to. He was signing personal guarantees and everything on all kinds of debt to bet it all to get to that next level. After success is takeoff, okay? So it's takeoff. So assuming you don't die, okay, this is the phase where, all of the things that we just kind of talked about are going into effect and sort of getting to that next level of growth. Why is this important? Because when we go buy an existing company, okay, if you are using, like in Buy Then Build, I just promote the fact that, hey, bank loans are available, okay, in order to buy these companies. So if you have whatever, $100,000, $250,000, you can go out and buy one of the largest companies, largest 4% of companies in the world, okay, with a bank loan. That's great, and it allows for the equity buildup to happen behind the scene inside the thing. But the truth is all of that cash flow, okay, that's coming in from the business, like 50% of it on a huge loan like that is going just towards your equity buildup as the owner, okay. And so there's a series of these stages that happens inside the business after you acquire it. So if you buy a business that was, success disengaged, for example, okay, cash cow, wonderful. So the first step is you need to build up equity in that business, right? You can't necessarily bet it all again because you're betting it all to sort of acquire it, don't you see? And so in order for you to go out and start focusing on people, planning, systems, and delegation, there's a certain level of that, but you're almost back to the original existing phase where it's like the owner's ability to execute and also cash, right? Those were the first two things. So we've got to focus on those things right after acquisition, and then also focus on, the management team and making sure that this machine continues to run. You've got to give it some time. to build up cash. Okay, private equity firms, they are notorious for putting in 40 to 60% cash when they buy a business, and the reason is because they want to get that that debt load, that P&I, principal and interest, overhead down, so that there's a little more cash to work with. Then they cut expenses, okay, and then they invest to grow the business to the next level so that they can sell it at a higher multiple or whatever it is that they're doing, right? They engineer the exit into it. And by engineering a 3 to 5 year exit into it with lift means that you can't take on that level of debt. So if you're taking on the level of debt of an acquisition entrepreneur, right, you're saying, okay, I'm going to take on 80 or 90% debt, you have to realize that you're back in the existence phase. You just are in a protective shell, okay? So give it time, build up equity, but then once you get some growth, once you build up some of that equity and you've got room to go sort of bet it all again, it will be your decision. Do I want to disengage and own a cash cow, or do I want to go full court press and grow this business and go into the takeoff phase, okay? Hiring more people, implementing more systems, all the rest of it. There's low-hanging fruit usually, but this is sort of next level. After takeoff is really just maturity, okay? Maturity. And what I'll say here is this is the place where anything under $250 million is considered a small business, okay? So even if you have $100 million company, okay, to some extent you are mature in that space, right? And there's maybe you've reached kind of the plateau of the total addressable market, or TAM, in your space, and so now you have broken through that previously successful cash cow and taken it to a mature small business, okay? If you are considering buying a business in the next 1 to 24 months, please consider Acquisition Lab. We built it to be the accelerator that I didn't have when I started buying companies in 2004 to 2006. Okay, we anchor in world-class education. We have a vetted community. About 70% of applicants are not actually invited to enroll. We've got a full suite of resources and a supplier network and all the rest of it. And of course, we have massive group coaching. We've got the Diamond Method, which is basically you're able to take your private deal to multiple coaches. We have almost a different coach every single month. And of course, I run the search forum every other week. So please consider Acquisition Lab. See you on the inside. Thanks so much.